House in Baltimore. I am going to be scouting some London party locations for our Ravens trip over there in September. But when the Orioles jump out to the 6-1 lead after giving it up early in the first inning, it is a day of celebration here. So I'm going to welcome Luke Jones in. They're not going to have a lot of 12-1 victories, right, Luke? I mean, literally, right? I mean, they're going to have some 4-3s. They're going to have some comebacks like they did against the Pirates last month. They're going to win some games. They will provide their own little version of Oriole magic after they dole off Britton and O'Day and Brock and Seth Smith and anyone else that's not tied down the next week and a half. But 12-1 for a night. Crush Davis, couple of bombs. Nice victory, right?
It was, and certainly the bats kind of grabbed the headlines, but first consecutive quality starts for the Orioles in almost 7 weeks. You go back to June 1st and June 2nd. It was Wade Miley and Alec Asher against
Boy, that's
the Red
even harder to believe, right? When you put
Yeah.
those names back to back, too. I would have said, well, yeah, maybe Jimenez and Tillman did it back. I'm just thinking out loud, but I wouldn't have thought of those two. You'd have won a lot of money on that bar bet.
Although I'd say this, I mean, when you look at a team that only has, I think, 34 quality starts on the season, Alec Asher had a couple of those, actually, despite the fact that he's in the minor leagues right now. But pretty much the story, and we'll talk about Dylan Bundy, of course, who pitched pretty well after that leadoff home run he allowed in the first. But Orioles score 6 times before Tyson Ross even records an out. I mean, that's right out of the 2017 Orioles playbook, being on the wrong side.
Absolutely. That sounds like an evening with Ubaldo Jimenez to me.
Yeah, Ubaldo or Kevin Gausman when he's been at his absolute worst this year. I mean, that was that kind of night for Tyson Ross, but a nice win for the Orioles. Their biggest margin of victory for the season as they win 12-1. Chris Davis with a huge night. And this was surprising. I mean, we've seen Chris Davis. He's had a couple 3-home run games. Clearly, despite the strikeouts, despite times where he's struggled, this guy's had some big performances and some big seasons over the last 5 or 6 years. A career-high 6 RBIs.
Career high, right? Yeah, I thought he hit 2 bombs in a game with he had some big games. He had some 4 for 5s. He was right there. They gave him $150 million. That's how good he was, right?
Yeah, I mean, I would have guessed he's had a couple games where he's driven in 6 or 7 runs even, but a career-high 6 runs driven in for him. Trey Mancini goes deep. Jonathan Scope, 2-run double. Seth Smith, who is on the trading block, second straight night for with a home run for him, so you like seeing that. But all in all, a nice victory, huge offensive output, and a really solid outing from Dylan Bundy. Wasn't dominant, but I thought he pitched quite well, especially after he got through that second inning where he loaded the bases but got chewed a ground out. Rangers really didn't threaten whatsoever after that, and he goes 6 innings, and after having the long layoff, he hadn't pitched in nearly 2 weeks. Was good to see him pitch as well as he did because, lo and behold, Tuesday night, he surpassed his workload from 2016. So, that's going to be something that, as much as we're going to be talking about who the Orioles may or may not trade and what happens going forward, what they do with Dylan Bundy and his workload the rest of the way, I think that's going to be something interesting to monitor, but good to see him pitch the way he did on Tuesday night.
Hey, dude, it's all interesting to monitor right now, right? So let's start on Bundy, because if you are a believer that Manny Machado's coming back next year in spring training and going to play baseball here, and you are a believer that they're not going to trade Bundy or Gausman or any of the damaged, goods that they have right now, that they're only going to trade these relief pitchers. And I have no reason to doubt what Ken Rosenthal or anybody else is reporting. I mean, they've been lying for 25 years about so much. The only thing you can really judge them on, honestly, is what they actually do. Not what is said. I judge them on the track record of it all. I really do believe these relief pitchers will be gone in 10 days, right? Like, I'm leaving for a trip and taking some downtime here, and you can follow me out on Facebook or Twitter and the internet. We'll be posting over the week. And I'll come back at the end of next week. I'm assuming they're either going to be gone or on the road to being gone. And you're around the team. I mean, you're in the locker room. These last 2 starts, there's always a little pep in the step when Darren O'Day could get called in out of the bullpen in the 7th inning tonight and say, hey, dude, you're going to Houston or you're going to L.A. or you're going wherever, call your wife. We had to pull you out of the game because those are the kind of shenanigans that happen here over the next 10 days. Remember the night Canseco got dealt?
Yeah.
It's 10:30 at night. We're watching the game from Oakland, and we're like, what's going on? And then in the age of Twitter, all of these trades they're magnificent in their own right, aren't they? I mean, the rumors come out, and now, like you said, he's no longer Seth Smith, who, hit the ball pretty well on Tuesday night. He's now auditioning for the pick your team, New York Yankees, whomever it might be, and that's a whole different level of competition there too, and there is something different about that, and you know this because you've been in the locker room now for, going on a decade. You walk in on those days, it's an eggshell environment when there are 4 or 5 guys walking around that are kind of waiting for their agent to call. Their wife is waiting. I remember when Javi Lopez was on the block. He lived in my building. I'd run into him all the time, and he'd say, I think today's the day. They're consumed with it. They really are.
Oh, there's no question about it, especially when you get down to the witching hour, the last day or two specifically. I can recall a couple years ago when we talked to Tommy Hunter probably about 20 minutes before the deadline. I guess the deadline was 4 p.m. That year, and it looked like the deadline had passed and he was going to stay. And then right around, 4:05 maybe, something along those lines, he gets called into Buck Showalter's office and had been told that he was dealt to the Cubs. So it's definitely, it's an uneasy time. And as much as you automatically think, okay, well, any of these guys are going to be going to a contender, going to a team that has a good chance to get into the postseason and hopefully do some damage in the postseason. These are families that are uplifted.
Do people think it's like rotisserie, right? Like you sit there and we get on Twitter and this guy's getting traded for that guy and this minor leaguer who's living in Peoria right now and thought he's going to be a Red Sox his whole life, has to call his family and say, that Red Sox jersey you have in the closet, they dealt me to Milwaukee.
Right.
You know what I mean? Like, or whatever the deal would be. It's weird for them, and I don't think the fans really can put themselves into that position of how awkward this is for not just guys that consider themselves safe. I mean, part of the Angelos mindset and all this is we need to settle Machado down. All this trade talk's no good for him. And that's the way Angelos believes. I mean, I've sat and listened to my Barnes stuff that I'm going to play next week. He went through, Bobby Bonilla and how, fragile it was for Bonilla and Wells to be dangled out on the trade market and how that got in their heads. That's what Peter believes, and I don't think you and I are going to disagree with that. But for a couple of nights, it does inspire some players to go out and play a little better if they think they're going to get tapped on the shoulder.
Yeah, I mean, it all depends on the individual. I mean, there are certain guys that are going to thrive in that kind of environment. There are going to be other guys that it's going to take a little bit of a toll. So it'll be interesting. I mean, certainly, as much as Machado is the masterpiece, which it is apparently unavailable, where they're not listening to any offers, at least at this point in time. Zach Britton.
It's inconceivable, by the way, right? On the Machado thing.
They're not at least
it's inconceivable.
Listen, at least. And as I've said to you, I mean, when you're talking about guys that are not having expiring contracts, I mean, Seth Smith, that's a no-brainer. Wellington Castillo, that's a no-brainer. Hyun-Soo Kim, if anyone wants him, that's a no-brainer. I mean, the fact that Dan Duquette would even have to get approval for guys like that, is crazy. But, Zach Britton is under club control through next year. Same with Brad Brock. Same, Manny Machado is in that boat. I've said to you over and over, you don't have to trade those guys in the next 2 weeks, but you work under the understanding that if you wait until the off season, and you can do that, but
why not go fleece the Red Sox here, dude?
Well, I mean,
they need a third baseman. I mean, gosh. I mean, but if you're Angelos as well, and you're really an honest guy, which he is not an honest human being, wouldn't he just say, you know what, I'm 88 years old and I want to win, and this is our, we're going to try to win next year. and we're really going to try to win next year. And then we come back on April 1st, and we'll judge what their rotation looks like and what their lineup looks like and what version of Chris Davis we're going to see. And we know Trumbo's going to be a part of this and where they're going to go and give Scope, $65 million or whatever that number is that locks him in here for a little while, and that we're really going to go after Machado. We love Machado. We're going to give him a lot of money next year. If he comes back next year and hits 284 and hits 29 home runs and plays that defense and is good for 150 games and his knees hold up, we're going to get in the sweepstakes for our guy and build him a statue. But, this organization doesn't work that way, man. And that's why it's FUBAR 10 days out on this, that everyone in baseball is like, the playbook here is you got Machado hitting 239 in a year when you're going to finish in last place or fourth place or something like that in your own division, and you have no pitching and you have no pipeline. It's time to go out into the market and fleece. I mean, this is the fleecing season. Go get it. Go bring me in 8, 12 prospects here so we can find 5 big league ball players in 2019 to maybe get this team back to a point where they can compete with the Yankees and the Red Sox. I mean, and the Orioles are under a big spotlight here, Luke. I mean, Will Leach is writing about them. Rosenthal's tweeting about them 5 times a day. I mean, they're in the middle of all of this. They could be a big, big winner on August 1st just with a bunch of names of Juan Bells and Manny Alexanders, right? Like, that would make them a winner in some fans' minds. But in Peter's mind, he's got to have Machado on a billboard next March, I guess, because there is no guarantee beyond that, right?
Sure.
Sorry I'm ranting, but, this is the stuff I sit around here all day and I scratch my head and say, they're going into the toilet again. And I have a hard time not believing that given the 25-year history of this.
Well, you look at the state of the farm system just like I do. They have a few pieces here and there, but certainly not, it's not littered with top 100 prospects up and down the board as far as Baseball America or whoever's evaluating. But to get back to the point about the relievers, Zach Britton and even Brad Brock could bring them an impressive haul of prospects. Look at what the Yankees did last year with Aroldis Chapman and Andrew Miller. This was a team that was selling last year, and you see where they are now. And look, the Yankees farm system at that point in time when they made the decision to sell was in better shape than where the Orioles are right now. That much is clear.
Dude, I remember when the strikeout used to be a sin. It's no sin to be a seller. It's no sin to be honest with your fans.
Sure.
To be honest with yourself. To be real. This is really about honest self-evaluation is what this is.
It is, but getting to Machado specifically, it's been the observation's been made by more than one person that there aren't a ton of buyers that are looking for position players, and specifically third basemen, other than the Yankees and the Red Sox, basically. And we know, for whatever reason, they're not going to do that.
Stupid. That's stupid. Well, it's baseball stupid. If you go back to the history of baseball, it's stupid. And the Orioles won a world championship from the best deal of my lifetime, quite frankly, and not Frank Robinson happened before me, but, the mid-1970s deal, and I remember, that deal vividly. I remember remember picking up the Morning Sun that day, after that deal, and they won championships because of that. Rick Dempsey sitting on television, wearing a pretty tie after the game tonight because of that deal. So, you got to make a deal. You know what I mean? Like, that's part of the risk reward of being in this business.
Understood. But at the same time, if there's only one suitor for Manny Machado right now, or 2 suitors for Manny Machado right now, and there might be 5 in the off season, is there something to the idea?
Well, I think you rent him for 1 pennant race or 2. 2 provides much more value if you're the buyer. For me,
agreed,
if you're serious about winning, and look, a lot of these teams right now, the last couple of days, the bidding has started kind of high, I think, from a prospect level, because if you wanted Quintana that bad and you knew you couldn't get Sonny Gray or didn't want him, you had to go all in. And we've seen these things be mistakes in the past with Samardzija, and I'm going back over the last few years. But, we're going to see Cole Hamels around here in the next 48 hours, and, that's been a pretty good deal.
Sure. And look, I'm not saying I wouldn't trade Manny Machado, but what I'm saying is if you don't get the right deal in the next 12 days, you don't do it now.
Fair enough. I agree with that, 100%.
Right. So, and a lot of that goes back to my point that I've talked about a lot, and I'm not the only person who's noted this, but is Dan Duquette your long-term general manager? And if he's not, then I don't know if I want him trading Manny Machado, because do you trust him to get the right haul? I mean, are you going to get a haul of guys?
If you don't trust him to make a deal this week, he shouldn't be your general manager.
Well, and that's.
I mean, come on, right? I mean, seriously.
And it's a fair question to ask, because you can say, well, look at some of the. Not that they've traded away a ton of Jake Arrietas, but they've also traded away some other lesser pitchers who could have been helping them over the last 16 months, let's say, over the last 2 years. So that's the point I'm making. And if there aren't as many immediate suitors for Machado as there could be in the offseason, when teams are typically a little more inclined to be bold and to change their roster around, then that's the only point I'm making. But at the same time, guys that apparently have been cleared to be traded, I mean, Zach Britton and Brad Brock can give them an impressive haul, and that can go a long way. Look at what the Yankees got for Chapman. Look at what they got for Andrew Miller last year, and what kind of position that's put them in to not just be better, but to then go ahead and make some trades like they did on Tuesday night with the White Sox, 2 bullpen arms and Todd Frazier. So, all I'm saying is, as much as you talk about sell, these aren't, all these assets we're talking about aren't expiring at the end of the season. That, all I'm saying by that is, make sure you're making the right deal and not just making a deal for the sake of making a deal and not. Well,
that was the Sid Thrift thing. The last time we had a sell-off, it was, you're giving away Will Clark and B.J. Sir. I mean, it wasn't the valuable property that relief pitching is right now. Right.
Well, I mean, you just get into that. You don't want to make that's why you got to take the emotion out of it. There's frustration. There's no doubt about that. I think as much as fans have been frustrated, that Dan Duquette and Buck Showalter have been frustrated watching this club for a variety of reasons, with some veterans who have underperformed, many veterans who've underperformed, and guys like Kevin Gausman who you're still scratching your head as we're getting to the end of July as far as why he struggled as dramatically as he has. But at the same time, you got to take the emotion out of it and say, okay, how do we get the absolute best deal? And more specifically, and we haven't talked about this too much, but what kind of deal are you looking for? Are you looking for prospects that are closer to being ready?
Or are you looking for a number 4 starter next year, right?
Well,
Wade Miley or whatever you're going to do.
Is there that? Or are you looking for, with the longest-term outlook, and looking for the absolute best prospects, period? Even if that means that they're some much more highly regarded, but they're in lower levels of the system, and if you acquire them, they're not going to be ready next year.
Yeah, dude, if you get a shortstop or a third baseman, you better be preparing for Machado to not be on that side of your infield, or you better be preparing to give him $32 million a year, or whatever that number is going to be.
Well, and that's the other tentacle to this. I mean, and I know what you're going to say. There isn't a plan, and that very well might be the case, and especially
I 25 years of doing this and writing about. There is no plan. The plan is, let's see how Mr. Angelos feels about this today. Like that was the plan when he was 68 years old. At 88 years of age, nothing got done when he was involved and fully lucid. At 88, I would my mom's 98. Nothing happens quickly. Nothing. So, on a deadline, come on, man. I mean, the place isn't well run. Buck and Dan have done all they can do, but at these key moments of decision for the destiny of the franchise and where they need to go, I don't trust it because I don't trust him, and I don't trust their, as Ozzie would say, process, because I don't think they have a process. I think the process is, how's Mr. A doing this morning? Oh, had a bad donut this morning. I'll call him this afternoon. Let's see how lunch goes. I think that's the way the place is run. Because I've been told that that's the way the place is run by people.
Sure, and I'm not disagreeing with you on that. I think there's a process within the parameters that Dan Duquette and the rest of the organization have been given. The parameters in which they've been given to work. Whatever the budget is in a given offseason, et cetera. But if you're going to tell me that the idea with Manny Machado is you're going to make one final run in trying to re-sign him in the offseason, and then if they balk, which you would assume they're going to balk, then you trade them, then I'm okay with that. I would be okay with that. But, if that's...
But if your relationship with him and his agent after all these years come on, man. You know the girl's going to marry you or she's not, right? I mean, come on, really?
Well,
I mean, you really do.
But if you haven't made a $350 million offer, $300 million, and look, I'm not saying they will.
Dude's hitting 239 too, so you know what I mean. Maybe Buck and Dan are like, we're really not in love with this kid. We wouldn't give this kid $300 million. We're around him every day. I mean, a lot of guys don't like him. I mean, there's a lot of that going on too, and he's hitting 239. And Mr. A might say, I need somebody on my billboard. I mean, that's the way the Chris Davis thing went down. From my understanding, is I like Chris, a good guy and all that, but if it were my money, I wouldn't give him $150 million. I'm pretty sure Buck felt that way, having been around the game 30 years and creating the Arizona Diamondbacks and running a front office. I mean, Buck doesn't want to be stupid with Peter's money either, because it's his money too when he can't get a pitcher right now, right?
Sure. So, I mean, there are lots of layers to this. And again, selling doesn't mean you completely sell everyone necessarily. And, it doesn't mean that you're only looking to sell Seth Smith. I mean, if we're talking on August 1st and the only trade they've made is Seth Smith, then, yeah, then you look at this and say, where exactly are you heading as an organization? But, if they trade Zach Britton, if they trade Brad Brock, I'm very skeptical that they're going to be able to trade Darren O'Day. I think they're going to
have to give him away. I mean, do you really want $18 million of his money on your books the next 2 years if you're the Orioles? I mean, you should be doing everything you can do to toss him into a deal. That's what's going to happen. I mean, we'll take O'Day too. We'll take the money. That's a good deal for me, because I don't think I want to see Darren O'Day here. I mean, you don't like the way Jimenez looks right now. You don't like Wade Miley. Why? You don't like Chris Davis's kind. Why take him on? I mean, throw him in. Make that be part of the deal. That's probably the way this is going to go, right?
Or, and this is probably not going to happen, but you toss in a little cash and maybe you do get something for him then. And I'm not saying you're paying all of it, but if you're willing to pay some of that, then maybe you do get.
Well, right now you're on the hook for all of it, so
Sure. So, but my point is, I mean, Britton and Brock are both very attractive pieces. Britton could be an Andrew Miller, a Aroldis Chapman kind of piece, potentially in a return. And Brad Brock, he's only making $3 million this year. You figure next year, probably in the neighborhood of 5, 6, probably 6, maybe 6.5 million, something like that. That's pretty attractive, and someone who has shown an ability that maybe not a dominant closer, but he can close some games for you if you need it. So those are two really attractive pieces there that Peter Angelos has apparently given Dan Duquette the okay to go trade. So you hope that continues. You hope they don't necessarily win 7 of their next 8, and then all of a sudden they fancy themselves as some kind of delusional buyer. But we'll see how it plays out. I guess if you don't want that to happen, you're hoping that these 2 wins over the Rangers are more anomaly than new trend being started. But the one thing I'll say on the flip side, the Rangers, a team that fancy themselves being a buyer, they're only a game ahead of the Orioles at the wild card standings right now. You'd have to think them coming into Baltimore and losing on Monday night and then laying an absolute egg on Tuesday night. That's not looking so hot for their chances, but certainly there's so many teams. The Orioles were in that group a few weeks ago before things really went downhill, and they fell far below 500. But while you monitor the market, while you're listening to potential offers, you're also monitoring which of these teams in the American League specifically who are surging a little bit and solidify themselves as buyers, and then other teams who start falling off and start kind of making a decision like the Orioles have apparently made. So it's fascinating. We've talked about it over and over with the second wild card. It just makes for such an interesting dynamic. And when you're talking about the AL, 2 wild card spots are very much up for grabs right now.
Hey, man, Houston looks like world beaters, and then Correa goes down with the ligament tear. They're coming in here this weekend. I mean, it's kind of a shame. I know you were looking forward to seeing Correa play because, that's the way we are. We love stars. We love good players. We love great teams. If you love baseball, I mean, this is like George Brett, having hemorrhoids the weekend before he comes to Memorial Stadium when I was a kid. It kind of bums me out a little bit. Besides, the Astros still have the slickest uniforms in sports, I think.
Yeah, I mean, it's up there. I definitely like that one.
The throwbacks, the Jimmy Wynn throwbacks they're wearing right now, those are sharp, bro.
Oh, they're way better than the ones, the red and some of the ones they've worn over the last 10 or 15 years. I totally agree with you on that, but it's a bummer. Yeah, I mean, the good news for them is they have a 16.5 game lead, and it sounds like they'll get them back sometime around mid-September. So it gets a couple weeks to tune it back up for the postseason. But he's their Machado, and they have some other really good young players, and Springer kind of leading the way there, and some others. They'll be okay, but certainly. That's something you don't like to see as a baseball fan, and not getting to see him over the weekend. But they're okay, and the LA Dodgers are okay. How about them? 10 in a row.
They might never lose again.
They have won 30 of their last 34. It is incredible.
In every different way, they've slaughtered teams and they've won 1-0 games.
How about the fact that the Arizona Diamondbacks are 15 games over 500? 15 games over 500. They're playing .581 ball, and they're 10.5 games out of first place. I mean, that's just...
And they're making deals now, too. So, I mean, look, the market used to be call me the day before the trading deadline. It's not that way anymore. I mean, there'll be a trade today. There'll be a trade tomorrow. There'll be one on Saturday afternoon. That's just the way this is working. And it's kind of exciting. It's fun, I mean, I've got MLB Network on. I was running around doing passport duty on Tuesday in a town where they have an 11.5 game lead in the National League East. So, I sense some excitement and some Nats hats running around D.C. and people up on the trading deadline and who are we getting and where are we going and who are these guys. That's part of the fun. And for the Orioles fans, they're not going to have that fun this year, but this could be a lot of fun as to who are these new prospects we're bringing in. It was fun for the Yankees fans this time last year, I think.
Yeah, and if, like I said, if you do it well, even if you're not trading Machado at this point in time, if you do it well with the other guys that they're trading, you can improve your mid, maybe not short-term outlook, but you can certainly improve your mid and definitely your long-term outlook. And that's if you're going to start selling, the idea is you're hoping to put yourself in better position for 2019 and 2020 and 2021. So it'll be interesting. The one thing we didn't touch on other than in passing, Colorado expressing some interest in Dylan Bundy and Kevin Gausman. I don't know about that. I mean, Gausman, you'd be selling him now at his absolute lowest value. I'm not sure unless they're going to sell him. They're trying to buy and think that.
I wish we would have sold Brian Mattis at his absolute lowest value. I'm just saying, but we sold Arrieta at his lowest possible value.
At the same time, we've seen Kevin Gausman pitch well, and we've seen Kevin Gausman pitch well for the better part of 3 straight seasons going into this year. That's one I'm still a little more bullish to say. If you don't think Roger McDowell can do the job, or you think you need to revamp your pitching development up top to bottom, which they do. I think that's clear. What we've seen this year has been an organizational failure.
We've been saying that for a quarter of a century, though. So that's
really. And that's true, and that's going back even before Peter Angelo's failures with their farm system. That other than a couple decent runs here and there, it's been very disappointing. But my point is...
Well, they spent 15 years having their pitchers in the minor leagues drive 208 miles across an alligator strip for 8 weeks of spring. I mean, they just did stupid stuff because, and the Peter principles appear next week. I'll leave it at that. But go ahead, finish up for me.
But my point is, okay, if you're dealing Kevin Gausman, what are you getting? Pitching prospects. Well, what haven't they been able to develop? Pitching prospects. So... I'm not too keen on that idea. I'm really not, and I really don't want to give up Dylan Bundy at this point. These are Dylan Bundy's under club control for several years.
What would you give me back for Dylan Bundy?
Well, and that's my point. What are you going to get?
Give me Arenado? I mean, what are you doing?
No.
Yeah.
And you could say, well, you might get some major league ready, near major league ready pitching prospects. Well, if that's the case, Colorado's not letting go of that kind of a guy. They might give you a good pitching prospect, but it might be a guy that's in the Sally League or the Carolina League. I'm not saying that the
California Penal League.
Yeah, I mean just like that level where they're going to be a few years away. So that one I'm not buying a whole lot, and I'm not too keen on that. But deal Zach Britton, deal Darren O'Day. Listen on some of these other guys. Deal Seth Smith. If Seth Smith gets on a roll for the next 10 days, you might get back a fringe piece that might turn into something for you eventually. I mean, I don't know.
Well, they're on a 2-day roll right now, so let's celebrate.
Right. I mean, it's just at this point, just keep all of your options open. And obviously, it doesn't sound like trading Manny Machado or Adam Jones or that's on the table.
That's not an option all of a sudden.
Which is crazy to not at least.
I mean, Bundy's not an option for me. If I owned the team, I'd say, nah. I mean, yeah, but what are you going to give me, right? I mean, that's what I would say with Machado, who you have to give $300 million allegedly to in 18 months, who's hitting 239. I'd say Red Sox, Yankees. Come one, come all, make your best offer, and when I hear the offer I like, I'll take it. And if I don't hear the offer I like, I'll call you in December when we get together in Tampa or wherever,
Sure. I completely agree with you there. So, we'll see how it plays out. It's going to be interesting because, you made the point as far as some of these moves that are made when they are. This comes in waves because inevitably 10 days from now, we're going to be talking about a couple teams that have struggled. And, it might be the Texas Rangers if they lose 7 of 9 and they're in a position where they're worse than the Orioles, let's say. So, you'll have some teams that kind of are cautiously viewing themselves as a potential buyer right now. But 10 days from now, that could be completely different. And then what do you know? You might have a couple really attractive pieces available that you didn't think were going to be available. So, you got these waves. It's almost, in some crazy way, it's almost like NFL free agency where, you have first wave, second wave, third wave. And at the end of the day, you'll have some teams at the very end who, come across as, might be a little bit desperate. A GM sitting there saying, I got to do something. And then, they go out and make a trade for this year's Gerardo Parra. Or someone along those lines,
or Seth Smith.
Yeah, or Seth Smith, and they end up giving up a piece for someone like Seth Smith that they probably shouldn't give up. And you hope the Orioles can be the benefactor of that after giving away Zach Davies a couple years ago for Gerardo Parra.
Just so I'm accurate, the winter meetings aren't in Tampa; they're in Orlando. It's December 10th through the 14th. So, all right, man. Well. Cheer up, hang in. We'll be following you out on Twitter as well as at WNST.net from Oriole Park at Camden Yards. We're a week out on football, Luke, so rest up, hydrate, as they say. Get plenty of rest and all that good stuff. And we'll see you on the other side of all of this sales and trading deadlines and drama-rama, and I'm sure we'll have some great observations next week as well.
Looking forward to it. Exciting time of year on both fronts. A little bit different for the Orioles this year, but like I said, potential to make themselves better for the long run. You hope they take advantage of that. And as you said, training camp getting underway. Going to be a really, really interesting summer in Owings Mills, I think.
Gotcha, brother. There he goes, Luke Jones, Baltimore Luke on Twitter, and Luke at WNST.net if you need him. You can find me in the Bayou Toyota Audio Vault. The Peter Principles are coming your way next week. All chapters out through Chapter 8, 9, 10, and 11 en route. The books on audio portion will be heard here at WNST.net and AM 1570. Of course, you can read it online as well. I'm on Facebook, Twitter, LinkedIn, Snapchat, Instagram. Going into the basement for a week. It's my wife and I's anniversary, my mom's birthday, and we're doing some scouting across the pond. So you can check that out. I'm sure on social media we'll be posting some crap from our summer vacation. I'm going to Dundalk, Ireland, too. I just wanted to say that on the radio because it sounds funny. I am Nestor. We are WNST.net, AM 1570, and WNST Towson, Baltimore, and we never stop talking Baltimore sports.